Does death end all? From the world's earliest morning, the thoughts of man linked life to a longer chain of time than that between the cradle and the grave. We find everywhere what Emerson calls man's audacious belief in a future life. In the minds of all men, or wherever man appears, says the sage of Concord, this belief appears with him, in the savage savagely, in the pure purely. John Fiske, in Myths and Myth Makers, says, the idea of death is something impossible for the primitive mind to entertain. Let us single out Egypt, the world's early school of the arts and sciences, the first leader of the world. What do we find among this primitive people? A faith in immortality, which was not a mere hypothesis, but as Schlegel was forced to admit, a lively certainty like the feelings of one's own being. The constructive power of the faith in immortality originated the Egyptian art of embalming. The astonishing pyramids are enduring structures which faith has erected to the memory of immortal beings. And, if according to Carlyle, living with hope of immortality is derived from the nobility of man, then must the old tenets of Egypt, the master minds who did so much thinking for the world for all times, have been a noble race. That the future life is but a shadow of the praeent, is the idea that runs through Homer, who lived about 900 years before Christ. What noble and elevated conceptions of life in the spirit world Socrates gives us 500 years before Christ. What an argument in Plato's Phaedon to demonstrate immortality, the profoundest reason ever produced. Pindar, forerunner of Plato, Pericles, who gave his name to the golden age of Athens, the shining splendor of Pythagoras, Sophocles and Aeschylus, all bear witness to the thought of Democritus, who said, the soul is the house of God. That man lived on somehow or other, were it only in the melancholy shadow of existence, was the general idea ever since there was a Greek people. Marcus Aurelius and Scipio Africanus responded to the dictum of Epictetus, every man carries about in him a god. Not only among the cultured nations do we find this sentiment. It has found its way into the South Sea Islands and those of the Pacific. It has diffused itself over Lapland, Asia and Africa. Livingstone in his travels tells us of old Chin Sun's belief, we live only a few days here, but we live again after death, we do not know where, or in what condition, or with what companions, for the dead never return to tell us. Sometimes the dead do come back and appear to us in our dreams, but they never speak, nor tell us where they have gone, nor how they fare. The chiefs of the Friendly Islands believed that the soul at death is immediately conveyed in a canoe to a distant country, called Dubluda. The followers of Confucius regard the departed as capable of giving aid to the meritorious of their progeny, and also inflicting vengeance on the unworthy. The Fijians believed that the state of a man after death would be identical in every way with that in which he died. When an Arab died, his finest camel was tied to a stake beside his grave, and left to expire on the body of his master, in order that he might be furnished with his habitual mountage in the region to which death had introduced him. Why in that forest grave, around which plumed and painted warriors stand unmoved and are of able as statues, do they bury with the body of the Indian chief his canoe and bow and arrow? He goes to follow the chase and hunt the deer in the spectre land, where the Great Spirit lives and the spirits of his fathers have gone before him. Some tribes lighted fires on the grave that the departed might not journey in the dark. Among the Seneca Indians, when a maiden died, they had a custom of imprisoning a young bird until it first began to try its powers of song. Then loading it with messages and caresses, they loosed its bonds over her grave, in the belief that it would neither fold its wings, nor close its eyes until it had flown to the spirit land and delivered its precious burden of affection to the loved and lost. In one form or another, however distorted or misshapen, however steeped in savagery or sunk in superstition, the idea of a future life persists universally and outlasts all kinds of vehicles that seem to contain it. Like some river of water of life flowing ceaselessly through the universal heart of humanity, it seems to say,